Husserl was a German philosopher who came up with the idea of transcendental phenomenology. If you ask him, how does one experience a phenomenon? He said that there are two entities here. There's a subject and an object. So the subject experience a phenomenon when a subject direct his or her attention to the object, and object reveal its nature to the subject, then the experience happens. So one example is, let's say you are looking at a light bulb. You observe the light bulb, and that information is conceptualized, or you become aware of that. So when you become aware of that light bulb, then you have experienced the object. Another example is a table. Imagine that there is a table in a dark place, and because it's dark, you cannot see the table. Although the table exists, you haven't experienced the table because you cannot see. So in life, you can experience pain, you can experience success, you can experience joy, you can experience failure. This means that when even failure happens and you are not aware of the failure, you haven't experienced the failure. You see that? So experience is all about being conscious of the object or of a phenomenon. So that's all about Husserl's idea about experience. We also have to think about what is the goal of phenomenology. So let's say you are studying an experience. According to Husserl, your goal is to attain the essence of the experience, or the true nature of the experience, or the underlying meaning of the experience. Let me give you this analogy. So you have vanilla beans, right? So when you extract that liquid from the beans, you can get an extract. When you study an experience, you'll be able to get the essence of the experience, the true nature of experience, the unique features of the experience. If you intend to use a phenomenological approach, and then your approach is informed by transcendental phenomenology, these are the four roles that you have to play as a researcher. The first role is to extract participants' thinking art. The thinking art is about the things that happen in their mind, how they become conscious, thinking, thought process, emotion, feelings, things that really happen in their consciousness. The second one is you should be able to practice Epoche. It's all about bracketing that will cause you to pass judgment to what you are studying. It's all about setting aside your preconceived ideas and the things that can adversely affect the meaning that you want to come up with, or the characteristics that you want to extract from the experience that you're analyzing. I'll go into detail about the practicing Epoche. The next one is applying imaginative variation. It's all about trying to identify participant experience that cut across a specific spectrum. You identify experience that have diversity or different kinds of perspective concerning the experience, and be able to analyze all the differences and come up with the commonalities across those differences of experience. And the last one is, your goal is also to arrive at the essence of experience, the true nature of experience, the underlying meaning, or the core unique aspect of that experience. These are the four things that you have to think about if you want to carry out a study that is informed by transcendental phenomenology. So let's start with the first one. As a researcher, you select people who have experienced a specific phenomenon. So you go around and let's say you are studying success. What is the experience of success? You identify people who have experienced success. You identify people, if you are studying maybe discrimination, you identify participants who have experienced discrimination. If you are studying the low job satisfaction or bullying or harassment or stress, any kind of topic or a phenomenon that you are focusing on, you select people who have that experience. So the first thing that you have to think about is, in order to get a very good understanding of an experience, you always have to focus on people who have had that experience, so that they can narrate and describe the experience with you. Then your next step is to give participants a chance to describe the experience. They are describing their thinking acts, their thoughts, they are describing their feelings, they are describing their emotion, their perception, their projection, their imagination, their considerations, all the things that goes into their mind as they experience the phenomenon. They can share that with you. So let's say you asked some participants, so how do you feel when you became successful? When you realize that you have succeeded in what you are doing? What were you thinking? How do you see yourself? So you are trying to give participants a chance to bring out the things that are going through their mind, their feelings, perception, imagination, everything that goes into the mind. You can call all of them thinking acts, right? Because you are focusing on participant consciousness. So the next one that you have to think about is the practice of Epoche. Epoche is all about bracketing, separating your judgment, your preconceived ideas, your knowledge that you have about the subject matter, separating them from what you are studying, so that information will not have adverse effect on what you are studying, because your role here is to give participants a chance to describe the experience to you. Then you analyze and report that information without bringing your own understanding into that description. So that's why you have to put yourself or all your past experiences, all your preconceived ideas from what you are studying. You behave like a reporter. You go collect that information and report what you found. So in terms of practicing Epoche, according to Husserl, what you have to think about is you have to move from natural to a phenomenological attitude. So we all live our life within or using or having the natural attitude. Sometimes we take things for granted. Sometimes we make connection between the experience and the context. You want to find out the background of the people so that you better understand the experience. That's what we do in life. We sometimes judge people based on the standard that we already have. We use our standard to measure what is good or what is bad, what you like or what you don't like, how you perceive things. We have our natural attitude. But when you want to study an experience using transcendental phenomenology, you have to move from the natural attitude to phenomenological attitude. You have to be aware that now you are a phenomenologist. So you have to take your role very seriously. Be aware of yourself, be aware of your preconceived ideas, be aware of your biases that you have so that you put them aside. Also, you should be able to detach experience from its context. What we are doing is that we are not trying to really find out the reason why people behave the way that they are behaving. When you're using this transcendental phenomenology, you are not focusing on why people were successful. If you are wanting to study success, you just want to describe what it means to be a successful person. So we don't focus on the context, we just focus on the description of the experience. So that's why sometimes we separate the context, the situation participants find themselves in, the background of participant, and just focus on the experience, the description of the experience, because what you are doing is that at the end of the day, you want to see whether there is a commonalities across that so that you come up with the essence of the experience. The essence doesn't connect to any kind of background, it's just there, then everybody is connected to that, irrespective of their background. So that's why in Transcendental, we don't focus on analyzing participant background. We are focusing on analyzing what they are telling you, the experience, the description of the experience. Also, the last one is to suspend your judgment. As I said, we all have some standard. We all have something that we try to compare. That's what we do. In order for you to understand your daily life, you always have to compare it with your previous experiences. That's what we have been programmed. That's how we behave. But when you're doing phenomenological study, you have to suspend that. You have to put them aside and allow the data to speak to you. You are just like a vessel trying to summarize or identify the characteristics of that experience in terms of Epoche. This means that you are reflecting on your background, your biases that you have, the judgment or preconceived ideas, and setting them aside so that they will not influence or adversely influence the analysis that you are doing to come up with the essence of the experience. So the next one is application or applying imaginative variation technique. One thing that you have to think about is when you are studying a particular population, right? Ask yourself, why don't you study only one person when you are doing a phenomenological approach? Because we believe that background, perception influence how do you experience a phenomenon and how they see what they have experienced. We believe that everybody experiences things when they have the natural attitude. Because of that, there's always going to be variation of the narration of participant experience. You can identify 10 people and ask them, how do they experience failure in life? Or maybe how do they experience success? Everybody will give their different understanding and different experience of success. But your focus is on success. Why is everybody giving different understanding, different meaning of success? Because of their background, their age, maybe their gender, maybe their ethnicity, maybe the situation that they find themselves in. Some people might define success because they have a lot of money. Other people can define success in a different way. So you see how you are focusing on success, experience of success, but people are giving different understanding and meaning of success. This means that if you are doing a phenomenological approach, utilizing transcendental phenomenology, you have to apply imaginative variation. This means that you have to select participants with diverse backgrounds. So let's say, as I said, you are studying success. You are not only going to focus on maybe people who are in between 45 and 60, right? You can focus on people maybe 18 to 25 and also 26 to maybe 35. You know what I mean? So that you can get variation of the description of experience. Then, because you have variations, when you are analyzing the data, you ask yourself, what is common across these variations? That is where you come up with the essence of the experience. So when you are using transcendental phenomenology as a way of informing your study, what you have to do is that you always have to select participants with diverse kind of backgrounds so that at the end of the day, you can get diverse or variety of the experiences that they have so that at the end you can come up with something that is common across. That would be the essence of the experience. So think about what you are studying if you are using a phenomenological approach. So maybe you are focusing on an organization and you want to study the experience of job satisfaction. In order to get a variation of experience, you are not only focusing on maybe leaders, please, one department. At the end of the day, you can see what is common across all these departments concerning their experience of job satisfaction. And that is where you'll be able to come up with the essence of experience. So you see imaginative variation. When they are narrating their stories to you, they are giving you their thinking, their thoughts, their feelings, their emotions, their awareness. And then you are collecting that information in variation because everybody is giving different perspective concerning the same experience. Then you'll be able to come up with what is common across, and that will be the essence. This one is quite similar to triangulation, where you are collecting data from multiple sources. In this case, you are collecting data from varieties of experience based on participant background, so that at the end of the day, you can see what are they saying in common. So I hope this one is clear. So let's go to the fourth one, The fourth one is about arriving at the essence of the experience. So your role is to come up with the essence of the experience. How do you do that? Let's say you have interviewed them, you have your transcript. Then you have to go through the transcript and extract all the relevant information, things that you are talking about and their thought process. You're going to use description focus coding. Description focus coding, as the name implies here, you are just describing what is relevant in the data. Based on the research question, you go through and identify information that is relevant and describe it. Can I create a phrase to represent that information? And so you are just describing what participants are presenting to you in 2 to 5 words, and that will be the code that you are developing. So at the end of the day, you're going to develop a lot of codes. Then you'll be able to categorize the codes to develop themes and also find out the common themes across participants. That will be helping you to develop the essence of the experience. If you want to know more about how to analyze data, the book that I wrote with my colleague, The Theoretical Framework in Phenomenological Research, will be very helpful for you. Just to get a big picture, your role is like a reporter. You receive the information, you summarize the information, and you develop themes. You see the themes as the characteristics or the features of the individual experience. Then you find out what is common across participants' information, and that will help you to come up with the essence of the experience. The fourth one is about arriving at the essence of the experience. So your role is to come up with the essence of the experience. How do you do that? Let's say you have your transcript. You have to go through the transcript and extract all the relevant information you're thinking at, right? And you're going to use description focus coding. Description focus coding, as the name implies, you are just describing what is relevant in the data. Based on the research question, you go through and identify information that is relevant and describe it. You look at it and see, what is the participant telling me, right? Based on what the person telling me, can I create a phrase to represent that information? And so you are just describing what participants are presenting to you in 2 to 5 words, and that will be the code that you are developing. So at the end of the day, you're going to develop a lot of codes, and then you'll be able to categorize the code to develop themes and also find out the common themes across participants, and that will be helping you to develop the essence of the experience. If you want to know more about how to analyze data, the book I wrote with my colleague, The Theoretical Framework in Phenomenological Research, will be very helpful for you. When you get my PowerPoint, I have a link there that will also be helpful. But just to get a big picture, your role is like a reporter. You receive that information, you summarize that information, develop themes, see the themes as the characteristics or the features of the individual experience, right? Then you find out what is common across participants' information, and that will help you to come up with the essence of the experience. So let's assume that you are using Transcendental Phenomenology, right, in your phenomenological approach. The purpose of the study is to describe participant experience so that you can arrive at the essence of the experience or the true nature of the experience or the core components of that experience. That's the main purpose of your study if you are using Transcendental Phenomenology as a way of informing your study. In terms of the research question, these are some of the examples. What is the experience of burnout among mental health professionals? You are just describing the experience. You identify people who have experienced burnout and let them talk about it. Or another question is, what is it like to experience microaggression in the workplace? You identify people who have experienced microaggression and allow them to share the experience with you. Then your role is to analyze and come up with themes that are common across participants. In terms of data collection, normally if you're using phenomenological approach informed by Transcendental, you can do interviews, identify people, interview them, find out their experience, and then record that information. You can also use photo elicitation as a way of generating rich information. So let's say you are looking at burnout among participants. You can let them bring a picture that illustrates the experience of burnout. And then when I bring that picture, you guys can talk about it. So what do you see in the picture? How does this link to your experience of burnout? Based on that, you can collect rich information from participants. So the photo elicitation is a strategy of helping participants to tell their story. You can use interviews without using photo elicitation. So you just have to figure out the best way. If you want to use interview alone, you can ask them about maybe, can you recall a time that you felt burnout? When was that? What happened? What was going through your mind? How did you feel? What were you thinking about? So you see, you help them to recall rich experiences and then talk about it, how they feel about it, how they think about it, what was going through their mind, what did they do, and other things that are associated with that experience. You are bringing back what has been experienced into consciousness and allow them to talk about it. The link here can also help you to learn more. So when you go to data analysis, what you have to think about is data collection. You are bringing back into consciousness things that were going through the mind, because the foundation of transcendental phenomenology is the subject paying attention to the object and the object revealing its nature to the subject. You are allowing participants to look at the object and describe things that are going through their mind. Now you finished talking about the transcendental phenomenology. Let's talk about the interpretative phenomenology. The interpretative phenomenology was propounded by Martin Heidegger. He was one of the students of Husserl, so he knows a lot about the transcendental. I think that he also agrees with Husserl about his understanding of experience, and he thinks that there is no separation between the object and the subject. There's no way we can separate ourselves from the object, because object is always around us and we interact with the object all the time. I'm interacting with you, I'm interacting with my computer, I'm interacting with my PowerPoint. You are also experiencing the information. So there's a lot of things around us, and all the things around us makes us who we are. So there's no way we can separate ourselves from the subject or from the object. He thinks that experience is all about interacting with this object. So we interact with people, we interact with the bulb, we interact with a projector, we interact with anything around us. He thinks that we as people are thrown into the world, and the world is full of possibilities. We're thrown into the world that has its own rules. And in order to survive, you have to learn about the rules and also interact with people and deal with things. So our life is more of dealing with stuff. And that's what Heidegger was trying to project about experience, right? So he thinks that if you are using interpretative phenomenology, your goal is to understand the experience or make meaning of the experience. You interact with things around you. In order for you to understand that experience, you have to reflect and ask yourself the actions, the decision that you made. And then based on that, you'll be able to understand your experience. Then as you are understanding your experience, you are understanding yourself too, because you know how you deal with stuff. The way you deal with stuff help you to know who you are. As people, according to him, we have two goals. In order to survive, we survive by dealing with things of the world. We are dealing with success, we deal with disappointment, we deal with burnout, we deal with discrimination, we deal with microaggression. And we try to discover ourselves by making meaning of our experience. And that's why when you experience stuff, you have to sometimes look back and try to understand what went on, what happened. As you are reflecting, you are understanding what you experienced and your action that you took, and You are continue to know yourself. Without self-reflection, you're never going to know yourself. Know the strategy that you use in life and how you deal with things. So in life, we interact with stuff and we have to make meaning of our experience. In case you are using interpretative phenomenology, these are the 4 roles you have to play. The first role is you are extracting participant action, reactions, and interaction. So when you meet participants, you interview them, and let's say based on the topic, maybe experience of success, you ask them, in what situation do you think you were successful? And what are the actions that you took? What did you deal with? So you are focusing on participant actions. It's very different from transcendental. You are focusing on only their thinking act, their emotions, thought process, conceptualization of issues, awareness. This one is more of action, because according to Heidegger, you will never know the nature of something without interacting with that thing, right? Now I know that this one is a microphone because I have interacted with the microphone and it's working. Somebody can design something similar to this one. The shape and everything will be like a microphone, but it might not function like a microphone. So in order to know the true nature of anything, you have to interact with the thing. The next one is to think about Epoche. This one is quite different from the transcendental one. This one is more of you are suspending your theories that you have using interpretative. What you have to do is to suspend all the theory that you have, all the explanation that you have about the issue, and allow the issue to speak to you, allow the information that you have to tell you what is really going on, so that you better understand what is going on, instead of trying to use your own theory to try to make sense of what is happening. Making sense of participant narration. So interpretative phenomenology, participant is trying to make sense of the experience because they have experienced something and then they are reflecting back, thinking, and trying to give information to you about what happened, what the person did, or the reaction, the interaction that the person had. Your role here is collect all the information and also try to make sense of it, try to see whether you can understand, looking at all the information that the person had presented to you. The next one is arriving at the meaning of the experience. At the end of the day, you want to arrive at the meaning, which is quite different from transcendental, which is the essence of the experience, the true nature. This one is like, what is the meaning of all these things happening? What meaning can we get? What conclusion can we make? So that's what we want to focus on. Your role as a researcher here is to give them a conducive space for them to share the experience with you. So you can ask them questions. What did you do? What was your reaction? How did you deal with the situation? What strategies did you use to cope? So these are examples of questions that you can ask them as they record the experience, and then try to capture their action, reaction, and interactions. The second part is the epoche. You are setting aside all explanations or theories that you have about participant experience. Maybe you already have understanding of participant experience. You are setting them aside so that you allow the data to speak to you about what really is going on, or what is the meaning that you want to capture from what has been presented to you. So you are letting the data speak to you. So if a person tells you something, you think about, who is saying this? What is the person's background? What situation was the person in? Based on that, you'll be able to better understand their experience without bringing your own explanation into that analysis. So you are trying to make sense of participant narratives. You are trying to understand participant interaction with the phenomenon. Are they doing something, implementing something, coping, reacting, any actionable thing associated with that experience? That's what you want to capture, so that at the end of the day, you'll be able to understand participant experience. So you want to arrive at the meaning of experience. So you have to first use interpretation focused coding. Interpretation focused coding is where you go through the transcript and then you identify significant information. What is significant information? Any information that will help you to address your research question. Then after identifying significant information, you have to think about what is the meaning of this information. Based on the meaning, you come up with a phrase representing that information. And then that phrase will be the code. At the end of the day, you're going to have a lot of codes, and then you categorize the codes to develop themes. Sometimes you have to go further and find out the connection between the themes, and then you can present the meaning of the experience. As I said, the book that we wrote also talks about how to analyze the data using interpretative and also using transcendental phenomenology. I go into detail presenting that information. So let's say you are using phenomenological approach informed by interpretative phenomenology, and the purpose will be focusing on interpreting participant experience. You are arriving at the meaning of the experience. So if you are focusing on burnout, you can say the purpose of this study is to maybe understand the experience of this group of people or professionals or healthcare professionals. Your purpose should evolve around interpreting experience and arriving at the meaning of the experience. So the next one is your research question. You always have to make sure that the research question is consistent with the purpose of the study. One example is, what meaning do employees ascribe to their job dissatisfaction? What meaning? And also, another example is, how do people cope with their experience of discrimination? So you see how the research question is constructed. It's about the meaning. You are trying to capture the process of coping. So if your goal is to sometimes understand their experience, if your goal is to capture the process of a specific experience, the action participant took, and other things, you have to construct a research question similar to what I have here. Because this one is not focused on describing the experience. You want to make meaning of the experience. So in this case, you can do interviews. You can also do focus groups. You can do photo voice. The photo voice is where you allow participants to go and take a picture that reflects their understanding of the experience, and then bring the pictures or the photos, and then they talk about it. You ask them questions and they talk about that. And you can also analyze documents. Let's say you have identified a group of documents that you think can help you to address your research question. It will help you to understand the experience of participants. So you always have to think about knowing the source of the document, who wrote the document, what was the intention of the person, who were the audience of the document. That will help you to better understand all the information. The interpretative phenomenology approach is quite similar to what biblical scholars use. If they want to understand a specific passage in the scripture or in the Bible, what they do is that they first think about who wrote this one. What was the situation there? What were the circumstances there? Who were the receivers of this information? Who was the writer writing to? And that will help them to better understand what the person is saying. The same way when you are analyzing the document, because the document was not developed for your study. The document was developed for something else, but you want to extract relevant information that will help you to understand a specific experience. This is where you have to think about the background in terms of who wrote it and when was the document written, so that you'll be able to better understand what is in there. So in this case, in terms of analysis, you have to use thematic analysis. So thematic analysis is all about going to your transcript, identifying themes, and then using a theme to address your research question. You are using interpretation-focused coding to code the data. You generate themes and then find out the connection between the themes to help you to understand participant experience. Then you can create a narrative depicting participant experience. And as I said, our book will be helpful for you. This aspect is so interesting because this is where you can apply narrative approach when you are presenting your findings. Imagine that you have analyzed your data, identifying themes, you have found out a connection between the themes, right? And in order to let people understand the meaning of the experience, you present the findings in a story format, a very short story, and capturing your understanding of participant experience. I think that would be very powerful. So you can also think about it if you intend to. It's not required for you to do that, but it's going to be very interesting if you are presenting your findings and trying to present it in a story format to capture participant experience, your understanding of their experience. I think that would be great. Right.
Thank you for watching. If you have questions, post them in the comments section. Dr. Adu will be happy to address them. Subscribe to this channel for more videos on research methods.